Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours. As always, this is where you could submit questions about media and production 24/7. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can use this QR code, and I have to put that on a button because it's harder. This QR code that is showing up behind me, just scan that with your phone or with anything else that'll do that, and it'll take you right to Office Hours, askofficehours.global. That's how you can inject your questions into the discussion today. It's a great way to make your desires known to all of us in terms of what you want us to concentrate on, because the questions that come in and the ones that get voted up are what we spend the most time talking about. It is Thursday, our video focus day, and today in our second hour, we're going to be looking back at topics we've covered so far this year and looking for your input on what you want us to cover going forward. But right now, it is time for your questions. So let us dive in. Alexander, what do our viewers and listeners have on their minds today?
First one this morning is from Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina. What are the best options to convert NDI to separate SDI fill and key signals?
Alex.
Mickey posted the AJA Bridge NDI. I was about to say, I'm going to sit here and stall until somebody says something in the forums. Because I don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, I use Magewells oftentimes to go from NDI to SDI, but I don't know about they're just a single SDI output. But AJA Bridge, and Mickey will have to, I've not used the bridge for this, but theoretically it can do key fill at the same time. The key for people watching is that the problem really with the NDI going to it is getting both frames exactly the same. With key fill, they have to be identically delivered out. And I don't think that you can genlock like two Magewells, and so that's and Mickey confirms that David Brady said Magewell Pro converter, but it's single channel only. That's the problem. Yeah, that I use the Magewell for single channel, but the problem is getting both channels out. And the AJA Bridge will do that. I don't think very inexpensively. I think, but the question was best, not most inexpensive. But the bridge is, I can't remember what the price is, but it's not $10. It's more than $10. I think it's in the tens, over $10,000. I think on the bridge if it's what I'm thinking of. But it'll do the key fill out for you.
Timing is everything, as they say. Let's go to the next question.
Next question is from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. I ordered a Lewitt 6 to go with my Lewitt Ray mic, and it arrived DOA. So I went to my dustbin and fetched out a Zoom LiveTrak L-8. Am I better off with it than the Lewitt 6 interface?
Alex is going to start us off, and then Alexander will hop in. Alex?
By the way, one more NDI Connect Pro with a Blackmagic card is what Guy suggested for the last question. I guess my question for Paul is, how many things are you trying to input into your computer? I mean, the LiveTrak L-8 is a lot of desk space and a lot of I/O for a mic. It just depends on if you're putting a bunch of other stuff into it. It makes sense, but on a day-to-day basis, what are you actually doing there? So I'm going to guess that the preamps on the Lewitt are better than the Live 8, but I'll leave it up to Alex to jump into more detail.
Yeah, Alexander has some experience with that. Alexander?
I've used both products extensively, and I can tell you that the Lewitt is immensely better in every way, in sound quality, in A to D conversion. Paul, it sounds like you only brought out the Zoom because you just needed something to work, and from my understanding was when you bought that Lewitt Connect 6, you didn't need anything that needed more than 2 mic inputs. So just get a replacement for that. But I've sold quite a few of these. They've been pretty good. Like any product, any good company that makes products, once in a while you get a lemon, unfortunately. So I'm sorry to hear that you had that problem. But the preamps have a lot more headroom, a lot more gain on the Lewitt, and plus you get the Lewitt, the loopback feature and the dynamics processing on board. And it's just a much better sounding interface. So I would get your replacement Lewitt.
Perfect. And let's go on to our next question.
Next one's from the QR code. We have Seth from Singapore asking, my current live streaming business is based on Blackmagic Atem Extreme HDMI switcher and vMix. Planning to expand the business and overhaul the current HDMI setup and start from scratch. Shall I consider traditional SDI or embrace IP SMPTE 2110 or NDI route?
And Courtney's going to help us out here. Courtney?
Well, I would kind of stick with SDI for now. Blackmagic is just dipping its toe into the 2110 world. They have a few converters out, and they're they're adding inputs to some of their switchers. So it will be moving that way. But the interface electronics, the routers and switches, etc., are going to be a little pricey right now. So I would wait a couple of years before going in completely. It'll be the way to go in the future, but I think it's a little early to jump now.
Alex, what's your take?
Yeah, I think 2110 is probably a little early right now for you, especially in a small business. And there's definitely reasons to go to 2110 at scale, but only for, I think, specific reasons. I mean, one of the things we were talking about with the new Blackmagic camera that is coming out that's dual 8K per eye, 90 frames a second, is that our calculation is that's about somewhere between 80 and 96 gigs per second. Like so to at uncompressed coming out of the back. If they don't compress it, that's how much it's going to take to take that out in 2110. So we'll see what they actually do. But it's quite
those
a
are
thing.
Copper connections, or is it an optical output?
No, that would be, and you couldn't do it in copper connections. This is all
fiber.
Well, it would have to be. It could be 40. There's 4 Ethernets on the back of it, so you could do 40
copper
gigs
Ethernets,
each. Yeah, or so it's
parallel pipes.
It's a lot. Anyway, so we'll see how they configure that. But anyway, I would probably do. I will admit, as someone who wants to go somewhere and set something up quickly and have it just do the thing that it was going to do, I will lean into FPGA and SDI and so on and so forth. So by FPGA, I mean, Blackmagic switchers or something like that, things that you can just set down, turn them on, and they're going to work quickly. And so NDI is probably not going to give you, there's definitely people who could be successful at NDI. And again, I'm doing more and more with NDI. I just don't know if I would build it. Now, if you get certain kinds of cameras, like the Sony FR7s or other things like that, they have NDI and SDI. So you have cameras that are doing both of those things, so that if you decide you want to grow into something else down the road or combine those things, I think you could be in a good sense. It also depends on how complicated your show is going to be. I mean, do you need a lot of graphics? Do you need a lot of animation? Do you need a lot of those things? So, we had a great session. We're getting ready to do our first shows in Vector. It'll be a week from Monday. Grant is going to be the host. It'll be 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And it'll be our first Vector show. It'll be an evening, office hours in the evening, after dark. Ooh. It won't be really, I would say at office hours after dark, but I'm like, it's not really dark. Oh, I guess it'll be dark on the East Coast. It's like in the West Coast, it'll still be pretty sunny. So anyway, but we're going to be doing that. That's our first, we're going to be doing it. We won't do it the week of the 4th, but then we'll do it after that, hopefully weekly. And I don't know if it'll be Mondays or not, but it'll be one of those days. The goal is to start, testing, building production in the cloud. And we had a great session with Viz yesterday, and pretty excited about Vector. So I think that, we're getting more into those things. But if you asked me right now for things I got to do tomorrow, what should I switch to? I'd still probably go SDI.
Seems like we have something close to consensus. You're a little bit early. It just seems still to me crazy from someone who started with 3.5 megabit per second regular DV and could barely get that through without dropping frames. How much is going through these pipes now?
I built a RAID. From scratch so that we could capture 225 megs a second, because that's what it took to capture PSF so we could do 24 frames a second PSF from my Sony F900 or F950, so we could get it out via it was SMPTE fiber to a CCU, and then it came out of there and went in, and just to get that output was thousands of dollars, like $1,200 to build the RAID, and now you can do it on a thumb drive.
Now we toss around terabytes inside the studio, and it's just been such a journey. Yeah. Next question.
We have another QR code from Alan Cavetto in Midlothian, Virginia. Pix 240 HDMI out to Epson 1985 WU projector makes video but no audio from the projector speaker. I plugged the same HDMI cable from Pix into a Sony HDTV and got video and audio. Any other non-Pix HDMI source to Epson works fine. Why?
Courtney, you want to give us some intelligence?
Well, Alex uses, I have a Pix 240 and so does Alex. And, but it's been so long since I've used mine. I was trying to look up in the manual. It does support 16 channels of audio in over the HDMI in and out, perhaps. And perhaps it's your internal audio is routed output to some of the higher channel numbers like 15 and 16 instead of 1 and 2. So check that. That may be the problem.
So something as simple as routing. Alex, thoughts?
And it could even be 3 and 4. So the issue is that you have the way the Pix work. The Pix is still just the best recorder ever made. I mean, it's old and it's heavy and everything else, but it had so much audio, and so but with great power came great responsibility. You have to make sure that it's set there. So it could be going out of the HDMI. Remember that you can route the HDMI if you're recording stuff into the Pix. You can route that HDMI to channels 3 and 4. That way you could have mics 1 and 2 on the first 2 channels and the HDMI on 3 and 4. But then those audio tracks are in 3 and 4. And a lot of things would be able to see those, but a projector may only be looking for 1 and 2. And so just exactly what Courtney said, but it doesn't even have to be one of the 16 channels. It just could be just on the next channels down, and which would be very common if you had that setting, because we use that setting a lot, because that way we could record, again, the local mics, and I could record the output from a computer, going into it, so that I had all of that separate. And we did that very often. So, and that probably would not play out to a projector well.
Alexander.
The other thing to do would be check the projector settings. I don't know if this is a rental or if it's one that you own. Sometimes when people rent projectors, if they don't get reset, maybe something changed in the settings. I would dig into the settings menu and just make sure that there's no option to disable the audio stream from the HDMI. It may have a setting there, and that could be turned off.
Alex, you want to step back in?
Yeah, Mickey said ask Epson.
Wait, this is office hours. We fix everything ourselves.
Yeah, good luck with that. So, and then Paul Buchan says could be a sample rate issue or bit depth.
Courtney wanted to get back in too.
Yeah, it could be. The fact that he says that other HDMI inputs with audio work fine under the Epson, so I doubt it's a projector configuration unless, like you say, it's either sample rate conflict or it's on a different channel other than 1 and 2.
Okay, hopefully that helps you, Alan. Let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. I heard that iOS 18 will allow satellite texting from iPhone 14 and 15. How will this work?
Alex.
Well, magic, naturally. I mean, it's just, so.
Alchemy, it's pure alchemy.
I mean, with a lot of these satellite things, there's some data. The data is just barely any data that is talking to the satellite. It just doesn't leave a lot of data there. A lot of the satellite telemetry does have a back and forth. It's just that it's like 1 bit a second. Like, it's very, very slow to get things in and out of those satellite connections. And so it's a transponder that's dealing with lots and lots and lots of potential input. And so it slows it all down, because that makes it almost free to do, almost. And so I think that's how it's doing it. And remember, if sending emojis or sending other things like that, all it's doing is doing a bit that says that it's that emoji. So it's only 2 characters that it has to generate there. So but it will still take time. It won't be like you can have a conversation quickly back and forth with someone. But if you need to tell someone, hey, I'm lost and this is where I'm at, it would be very useful. Or if you can tell people that you're okay or whatever it is when you're out of there, I think that's it'll be very valuable.
Courtney?
I think it is SMS only, and I think don't they have a deal with Starlink? It's only the low Earth orbit satellites.
They do. I was going to mention that's part of what you get with iPhones, and I imagine that on the other side that happens too. They have an emergency thing where you can, if you're lost, if you're out hiking in the middle of nowhere and you're in deep trouble, you can use this safety thing and put up a text message. And what happens basically is the phone stores it and keeps looking for something, particularly a satellite. And as soon as it finds that, it sends that message with the coordinates of where the phone was. And a small number, but a significant number of people have been rescued from the middle of nowhere using that system that's built into all the iPhones at least. So it can be really useful. And just as Alex said, it's just a small, very thin text stream, and but it's built in there. Apple said they were going to do it for free for the first year, and I think it's been like a year and a half since they rolled out that feature, and they're still not charging for it. They just kind of consider it a public service. So if you ever find yourself broken down in the middle of nowhere, use that SOS feature, put in a text, and hopefully it'll function exactly the way that it's supposed to. Alex, you want to come back?
Yeah, and I have people that I personally know that passed away because they didn't have this. So this is not a, James Kim passed away a long time, ago because they got lost in the snow in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And so it is it's not a minor feature. The risk is always the chance of something happening multiplied by the consequences. And so the chance, there's a very, very low chance, but the consequences can be very high. I would say that I wouldn't buy a phone without this feature at this point. Everybody's got to put it in within the next 2 to 3 years, because it's just I'm out of range often. Driving in the back roads of California. So I think it's definitely a valuable thing, and I don't think Apple's going to charge for it, because I think that they found out that it probably didn't cost them very much to do it.
Right. It's not being used that much. I read an amazing story early. A guy and his family got stuck, I think, in that kind of circumstance, in the middle of a big, huge snowdrift and things like that. And he was so smart. He put that into his phone, and then he attached his phone. He happened to have, for some reason, something that he could make a hot air thing. And he sent the phone up. And even though he didn't have a connection where he had run into trouble, when it got above the horizon, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It connected to the first cell tower he could figure out, or the satellite or whatever, and the next thing you know, he was rescued along with his whole family because he was smart enough to do that.
There's a whole product there of cell phone hot air balloons.
Yeah. It's just really
like
interesting.
A little emergency one. You just kind of go, and then just
boom, there you go. Courtney.
Always carry a helium generator and a balloon.
Just be like a little one. It'd be like a little CO2 generator cartridge, but with helium. It would totally work.
Can I crack my water and get
What I foresee there being legislation involved that'll force all phone manufacturers to incorporate this feature in it. And I don't know if they'll have to make a deal with Elon or something, but that way, as a safety measure, that would save a lot of lives, I think.
Yeah, a public service band of something is just reserved for these kinds of help me, I'm in great risk messaging. Makes sense. Let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from John Foltz, Ceilings Grove, Pennsylvania. Do external preamps Chris Gelin talked about yesterday output a line level signal or a mic level signal?
Alexander, you want to dive into this one?
Yeah, almost always they're going to be line level because you don't need them to go into another mic preamplifier stage. You could overmodulate doing that. Now, you can find microphone preamps and channel strips that have a switch where you can change it for whatever reason. It would be pretty odd, but it can be handy if the only thing you have is another microphone preamp with no line level switch there. So some of them do have switches on the back. Some of them have switches in hard to get places. Like I have a Symmetrix 528E mic processor, which is very, very common in, not so much anymore, but it used to be very common in broadcast radio stations. And these types of devices would have switches inside the case because they don't want people to tamper with it. But in that one, you'd have to open up the lid and it would have a little switch and you can change it to mic or line level. So to answer your question, yes, it's typically line level unless there's a switch there for whatever reason if you need to use it.
Let's go on to the next question.
David Brady in New York City asks, what is the use of the NDI Video Output driver that NDI Tools installs? It doesn't seem to be addressable by anything but Final Cut Pro. Any insight?
Alex, do you have any?
I find it very odd that NDI would be the only thing that would see it would be Final Cut, because it just seems like not a Final Cut thing for it to see at all. So I guess my question is what is he trying to output from Final Cut or to Final Cut? NDI, could be some monitoring applications I think may use that. I don't know why it would be. Again, I'm a little confused by why it would be the only thing that it saw. The video output driver should be something that allows it to do video output to a variety of software and devices. And so I don't know why it would only be seen by Final Cut unless it's just on a Mac. A lot of things haven't been set up to look for it. So I guess my question would be: have you looked at can OBS see it? Like that would be my big thing. Does OBS see it? Does Mimo Live see it? Those would be the two that I would test. So you're looking, when you say it doesn't seem to be addressable, what are you trying to use to address to it? But those would be the two that I would look at. OBS specifically, can it see it? And if it can't, then I'm more confused.
Let's go on to the next question.
Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois asks, what are the best bang for buck, the other side of buy once, cry once, for PTZ cameras systems for small stage situation?
Oh, big topic. Alex, you want to dive into it?
I think it depends. It depends on what you're trying to do. We're just going to keep on telling you that. But you know, the issue is what are you trying to do with the PTZ? Is it a witness camera? What are you trying to build a production? Does it have to feel like it's momentous? Does it have to feel, or is it just there to give you some content? Are you putting it on a screen? Are you putting it in front of the live audience? These are all things that you have to do to kind of think through those. The PTZ optics that we talked about before, Bird Dog are good. Both of those are good PTZs. As you step up from those, the Canon, the 500s, I think the CN 500s are also, that's going to give you a larger sensor. It's going to give you a little bit more control, and then of course you start getting into the Panasonics and the Sonys as you go further past those. So those would be the ones that I would think about. But again, it's also like, how much control do you have to have? How smooth does that control have to be? There's lots of smaller rigs that can be built that are you're able to put regular cameras on and then be able to control them. But it really depends on what you're trying to execute there.
Alexander Knight.
Yeah, of course, those are all good points too. And of course, the other thing is, you know, the Sony FR7 is a amazing PTZ camera that's with a full frame sensor. But of course, the caveat with that one is that it's very expensive. So I don't know what your budget is, Kyle, but as pointed out, a lot of these Canon, Panasonics, you can find those for half the price. But the other drawback with those is that then you're dealing with a much smaller sensor. So my question is, what is the lighting situation? Because then you're going to need a lot more light into those cameras, and it depends on the lenses that you're putting in. So you're going to have to light appropriately for that. So again, what are you going to be using it for, and what's the lighting situation? Because you're going to need to spend some money on lighting too.
Alex?
Yeah, and one thing that I would recommend is looking for those larger sensors. James Haldane says that his Canon PTZs are 100 times better than his Bird Dogs. So that's his, you know, and as I said, the PTZ optics and the Bird Dogs are in one group of ones that are very cost effective. The Canons typically are a little bit more expensive, and they're going to, again, give you a larger sensor. As you work in smaller spaces, I think that you often want to think about bigger sensors, and the reason is the bigger sensors give you a shorter depth of field, which makes it look way bigger. You know, one thing that we did when we have a smaller set, we always want to do Super 35 or full frame, because the set will fall off. It makes the whole thing feel way bigger than it actually is. You know, and so that's the advantage of that. So that's why you want to start leaning towards those larger sensors when you have a smaller set.
Hopefully, Kyle, that gave you the answers you need. Let's move on. Next question.
Eric Hers in Hartford, Connecticut asks, please explain the technologies that enable remote color grading. How much latency is acceptable?
Alex.
So I guess my question is, are you talking about live color grading, or are you talking about color grading? And so those are kind of different things, because live color grading, especially in an area like sports or some kind of live event, the latency has to be very low, because you're actually reacting to something that's actually happening there. And so I think that's one challenge. As it's not live, the problem really is just how fast you can get something done and how fluid it feels as you start to do it. You know, you can now, there's one of the things that Blackmagic is working on, of course, with the Blackmagic Cloud, is the idea that you could open it up locally, and as you're making those adjustments, it's making it to everything. Eric said it's live for sports. With live for sports, I feel like remote grading is in the building. Like I wouldn't take on a project where I was trying to grade for live sports from somewhere other than the building. Like the latency has to be almost zero. I mean, because you think about a football game, you're in the wide shot and it's done. But it's I don't think that I don't think a lot of cameras get. I mean, I think a lot of things happen remotely. Playback happens remotely. Editing sometimes happens remotely. I don't think that a lot of grading that gets done. They may have done that during COVID, but I don't think that anybody's trying to do that now. I mean, the amount of latency that is acceptable is so low. I mean, you could potentially do it over private networks like the Switch, where you may be less than or only a couple frames behind. But I would be a little concerned about that. And I guess Mickey's talking about. And as Mickey said, he said for actual post color grading, colorists are mainly working on stills. Extreme latency is not required, which is what I was just talking about there. And live shading, though, is again live shading your cameras for sports. I think you have very, very little room for error. You could a TD could cut to your shot and be gone by the time you make the adjustment. So that's the issue.
That's been my experience too. In fact, they don't generally talk about grading, as Alex just used it. They talk about shading cameras. Most of those cameras, the big cameras, are set at colorimetry that is consistent among all the cameras. You really get problems like when you're at an open roofed baseball or football stadium and part of the scene is in shadow and part is in bright sunlight for things like that. So a good shader understands that and works in real time really quickly right before the director takes the shot. Anything needs to be fixed gets fixed as instantly as possible. At least that's been my experience watching people. Courtney, you had some thoughts?
Yeah, you just covered most of it. Yeah, I was going to mention that shading is just adjusting the iris in the camera, not necessarily color grading. They can adjust color grading from the CCU, but that's a direct connection to the camera, and you're looking at the full bandwidth and the full gamut coming to you. The problem is if you're remotely shading, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm just spitballing this, but it has to go through a compression because you're probably not going to see uncompressed video coming from a remote location over the internet.
You could.
Is there enough bandwidth to do that?
It would only be if you were using something like the Switch. So you could get anything else would probably start adding some more latency to what you're doing. But if you wanted to have low latency, I mean, the only way that I would do it is to put it over the Switch. So that I'd be looking at, one way to me would probably be 100 milliseconds or so. So a couple frames.
What kind of bandwidth would you need to do that? To do full bandwidth color gamut?
1.5 gigs.
Real time.
Yeah, I mean and that's what when you install the Switch. If you install the Switch natively, you have the capability, if you're willing to pay for it, to get 1.5 gigs. So you would, and it would
just
be
for one camera.
yeah. But you'd get a split, and then you'd be able to cut to it. You'd be remotely controlling like what camera you're looking at to make those adjustments. And so you split it out. You might have and if you don't need all of that, you could probably effectively shade a camera, not color it, but effectively shade a camera at only 270 megs a second or something like that, or probably even less. I mean, you could probably shade a camera pretty low bandwidth. You could you could pile a bunch of cameras on ASI, drop them over. You could send 8 cameras over the same thing and get them all back on ASI. It would not be. I mean, ASI is used for broadcast a lot, so you could be sending 50 meg or slices or 40 meg slices over ASI, wrapped into the SDI. Sent over it and send 8 cameras back to someone that's remote. They're going to get it at again slightly higher latency, but not much. And again, you could do it, but I would have to tell people that we were doing it that way, and that there was some reason. I'd have to have a reason to be backed into a corner to do that. Like, oh, we can't do it that way. I would always argue that we should be on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've never seen anybody who's not in the stadium in real time, directly connected to everything, who's doing camera shading, because I think that you need that reactivity. Let's move on to the next question.
Next question comes from David Brady in New York City. Are there any NDI monitor apps for iPad OS that support split screen mode?
I don't work with NDI a lot, and so I'm not really that aware of it. Alex, do you have some thoughts about it?
There's a lot of viewers on the iPad or on the iPad, but I don't know any of them that don't just take over the screen. I mean, they're designed to not be modal. They're designed to take over and make your screen a monitor. So I actually don't know. I definitely have NDI Viewer. I was looking at the ones that I have. They're NDI Stream Monitor. So those are the ones, NDI Sienna, NDI Monitor. But I think all of those are designed that I all of them, I believe, are designed to take over your monitor and turn it into a monitor. So I don't know of any of them that would work in split screen.
Alexander, thought?
I don't know if it works on split screen, but I wonder if the Sienna monitor, I know we've talked about that because they have an iOS version.
There's a lot of iOS versions of the monitors. Yeah. What they're all designed to do is go, oh, we're going to turn you into a monitor now. Like it's just not, we'd have to test it. But I don't think any of them, I think they all kind of take over when you open them up so that they're not something that you can, it's the split monitor part. I think that there's plenty of NDI monitors for the iPad. The problem is being able to have it be in a modal condition where it'll split screen. And I don't think
What if you could use the 2-up feature in the iPad OS to bring up 2 instances of two things and then compare them?
The problem is that some apps will just take over and they won't do that. That's
run in full screen.
They only run in full screen. That's the issue. Is that I don't think any of these will run in will share the screen. It's just so I think that's the problem.
All right. Let's move on to the next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle asks, which booth would you like to see today? It looks like this is related to InfoComm.
And those of you who weren't around in After Hours yesterday, I stopped by for a little bit. Guy Cochran is on the ground at InfoComm in a kind of a two-way conversation with anybody who wants to show up after the show and get in there. And he was wandering the booths and talking to people and fielding questions from the people in After Hours. It was a lot of fun. He's really working hard out there, and so he's going to go back and do it again today. So, Courtney, what do you think?
Well, I missed it yesterday, so maybe he's already covered this. But in the central hall, you could go in here and see if Shure, which is in the center there, right, C8334, see if they've got anything new in their wireless ATX line or their any new microphones that would be good for podcasting or live. That would be interesting. Also, Sony, if they have their Cletus or crystal LED displays on display there, that would be interesting too to see.
So this is your opportunity, everybody. If you want to go to do a little virtual InfoComm experience. It's informal. It's in After Hours, and all you have to do is cop into After Hours, and you will find it there. So good luck exploring the show with Guy Cochran, and thank you, Guy. He's putting in yeoman's work out there, just booth to booth, talking to people constantly. It's really fun to be able to get that view in from the outside. Let's go to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael asked, do you think they really had the executives in a plane for the WWDC 2024 keynote, or was that CGI?
Oh, no, that was all real-time live. Alex.
Yeah, probably not. So we're not going to do that.
Put the whole board up in a plane.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's the insurance cost for that?
Yeah, let me.
What's the rider for this?
So I think we talked about this a little bit in the graphics discussion, but if we look back at this, I had a chance to look at it a little bit more. And one thing, by the way, if you, I was starting to work on this and decided not to do it, but if you look at this shot here, what's interesting, by the way, is take a look at this as oh boy, do I love VLC. All right. So it came in at WM whatever when I downloaded it, so I'm kind of stuck in this.
Oh, it's a VLC Windows movie file.
Anyway, so what's interesting, by the way, is as you look at some of these clips here, this is obviously CG, or I think it's definitely CG. There's a lot of clips. If you look at Deadpool 2, when they jump out of the helicopter, with the X-Force or whatever, a lot of clips look really similar. I'm pretty sure that, as someone who's worked on a lot of these shots where you get brought in to do things, I'm pretty sure that the pitch for this segment was, we're going to do the Deadpool 2 jump, but in an Apple-y way. Like that was it's, that's how they sold it. But if you look at this here, what most likely happened, if we back up here, is that that's a set. So if I was doing that, the wings in the sky and the ground and everything behind it would have been CG. So the only thing that would have been on the set would have been the hull, and I think that they probably built that hull from scratch because they they made it look very Apple-y. I mean, they could have gotten a hull and then added the Apple-y stuff to it without as much expense. You wouldn't have to build all the metal and everything else if you didn't want to. But it could be. It's just another set. I mean, I used to work at ILM. They used to build these all day. So it's not, it doesn't have to actually work. It just, so it doesn't even, that could be all wood for that matter. Like all that whole set behind them could just be wood, and painted. So this might be metal, might be an actual device, but it definitely, there's some stuff here that feels so old that I feel like they must have gotten an actual hull and then just added this to it, but there was no reason to, and they also, by the way, they could have, if they did get a hull and they were shooting it at an airport, if it's sitting at an airport, they would just open it up and then you would have the wings and you would just simply add the propellers and moving and stuff like that, but definitely wasn't in the sky. So anyway, but I think that's it. I thought a lot of these were fun. I'm going to guess that, ones where you're seeing everyone from behind, they could have shot, they could have shot stunt folks and they could have even actually added some heads and they could have done it in CG. There's lots of ways to do that. But I think that as far as jumping out of the hull, I think that they were definitely, they were standing either in a plane that they had retrofitted or they were, they were on either a set or on at an airport using it, and then everything else was all CG around it.
And Douglas, I was being a little silly with my opening comment, but I did want to let you know that I have had more things that we wanted to do killed from insurance questions than probably anything else in my production history. It's not that you can or can't do it a particular way, but you often run into that wall of you can do it, but you can't get insurance coverage to do it the way you envision it. So you have to drop back and find simpler, easier ways to do it.
And I don't think there was ever a conversation that anyone was going to jump, any executives were going to jump out of a plane. Like there was never a conversation of putting them in there. Like that was never, like I'm sure that never even came up. Like I mean, right. I think Craig might have said it in a funny way, but I don't think he like.
Yeah,
you had be like, no.
You had 2 or 3 of the top people in the Apple hierarchy, the largest company in the world. They're not going to put them in jeopardy at all, period, end of story. So yeah, it's one of the things you just have to think about. Courtney, do you want to get back in on this?
Yeah, they do have a number of aircraft interiors here in Hollywood. There's even a company called Air Hollywood that takes. They have a mobile rig, which you're about to see here. That's in a semi. It gets there. It opens up. And you can see it. They pull out the seats, and it does an entire aircraft interior anywhere you want to shoot it. These things are kind of available.
Amazing.
So, I want one of those.
Wow.
You can have your own aircraft interior in your backyard if you want to.
Yeah.
It shows you the amount of money put into special effects for the movie industry. They've made specialists this is what's available for you. You want to rent it? I wonder what that goes for a day. That would be a pretty heavy cost.
I bet you it's not that bad. I bet you.
I don't know, but at their stage, they do have. It's a big warehouse, Hollywood, and they do have all kinds of aircraft interiors, including cargo planes and
Oh, so if you're doing a scene in a Cessna or
military,
something like that, they have someone off those.
Commercial jets, small jets, all kinds of aircraft.
The specialist industry. And that's why places like LA become these production hubs, because as the industry gets to a certain critical mass, they are able to assemble those kind of odd little niche things that make shooting inside an airplane reasonable and affordable and quick and efficient. Anyway, fun. Let's go on to the next question.
Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida asks, has anyone made substantial use of the Blackmagic Camera App and can share their experiences?
Alex Lindsay.
I use it a lot, and so far I found it to be great. Like it is so. If I'm shooting something in my family and I pull something out and I just need it to be shot, I will still use the iPhone version of the app, the iPhone app. But as soon as I say I'm going to use this, or if I have a little bit more time to set it up and I'm like, I really want to do something with this, or I really want to test this process, or I really want to get high quality video, and I want all the controls and all the dials displayed, then I move to the I definitely moved to the Blackmagic camera. I've started to play with the one that just got released, but I haven't done anything with it seriously yet. So, but the Blackmagic camera is the one that I've been using, and I've been really happy with it. I wish it did stereo. So that's the one thing about, if I want to do spatial video, I have to go back down to the Apple one, because Blackmagic doesn't capture spatial yet, which is doable. They just haven't done it. So I'm hoping that they'll add spatial now that they have a spatial big camera. I'm hoping that the little camera on the phone will support spatial as well.
Let's go to the next question.
Next one is from Eric Hers in Hartford, Connecticut. What benefits does GV AMPP give to the larger non-GV industry? It looks like that's Grass Valley Agile Media Processing Platform, perhaps.
Thank you for reading that. I was going to just have to. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I believe this is their cloud solution. So I don't know what it gives to the larger non-GV industry, other than it's another solution to do high-end production. So there's a lot of competition. Vector is going that direction. AMP is another one that is leaning into that. So I think that it's a really big solution that they're building into the cloud. I think everyone knows that a lot of productions are going to go into the cloud, and Grass Valley is going down that path.
Yeah, not at all surprising.
Maybe we should actually have them on sometime to talk about it.
That'd be fun. I'd love to find out. They've been such a huge part of the production industry. I mean, probably 90% of the switchers I ever ran into in TV stations and things like that came out of Grass Valley. So they've been around and a solid player for a long time. Let's go to the next question.
David Brady in New York City asks, the Light Phone 3 is striving to find a balance between connectivity and solitude. The specs look impressive. What would it take to convert the panel?
I had not heard of that before this question came in this morning. I know we were talking about it a little bit before the show. Alex, did you get some intelligence on what this thing?
Yeah, I did a little research on it here. Here it is. This has, it's a very, very basic phone. That's here. I think the intention again is to be as low key as possible. I think that if it ran, it's $399 for pre-order. So it says it's half off. It's less expensive. And that's the specifications. Let's see. This is their phones for going light. So this is it basically simplifies your life. I think it's that you have a handful of things. I think that it would have to run iOS for me to do it. Like I think that would be that I think iOS is kind of my the problem is that I do so much with my phone. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's all fine. It's just that so much of my life is embedded into the entire iCloud. I mean, this is the thing that Apple has the advantage of, is so much of my life is all tied into that. My calendars, my notes, what I write down, how I manage it. What it would do is it would create some other version of that. And I really like having, when I'm out somewhere, if I want to take a great picture, if I want to take some notes, if I want to learn something, my phone is there to help me do that. And I would just be frustrated, without it at this point. I mean, or I can go out without it. I mean, sometimes I just leave it behind. I'm definitely going to go out, but I will admit, I don't go very far. I go into the backyard. I go down into the hill below my house, but that's about as far as I go without my phone.
Courtney?
Yeah, I might point out that was a sale price, $799 is the list price. Probably runs Android. It does have an e-ink display, which is, static display, so it doesn't require any power to keep the display up as long as it's not changing. So that would be interesting. You should probably get incredible battery life out of this thing, since it's basically, I think it looks kind of like an overgrown smartwatch. If you took your typical smartwatch and blew it up about 2 times in each dimension, that's probably what you're getting here. Is the equivalence of a smartwatch with an e-ink display in it.
Alexander Knight.
I'm not going to say there's zero market for this, but I think there's going to be very, very small percentage of people that are going to want this. I mean, look, if I want solitude, I'm going to put my phone down. I'm going to go into the forest with a book. I don't need a device with a streamlined interface like this. I think this is just silly, and I think 3 years from now, this product is not going to be around anymore.
I sometimes think of these things, though, as the bookends of the market, particularly the very young and the very old. I know how many smartphones or smart-ish phones when my son was a very young lad. He used to trash them pretty regularly. It was very hard to teach him to take care rather than putting in the back pocket of his jeans and having him sit on them to crush yet another one. So we went through more phones than I would have liked in those early years. And for people who are quite old, who want just the simplest of features at the most affordable, there are specialist large button phones and things like that. But I would think that the top and bottom of the market like that would be the one place these things might find some traction. But Alex, what do you think?
I just look at these things and go, someone raised money for that. And someone who raises money for things, I'm like, someone got some sucker to give them millions of dollars to do that. Unless, it's like, okay, good job. Yeah. Well done.
Well done. Let's go on to the next question.
Eric Hers from Hartford, Connecticut asks, what is the acceptable latency for Vizrt Vector remote production for live sports?
Well, Alex, you were just talking about that.
Yeah, I think it just depends on what kind of sport. So I think that there's some sports that have it there. Remember that it's how much camera calling do you have to do? So I think that if you're doing a lot of camera calling, then the latency starts to become an issue because you got to be able to see it fast enough to make those decisions. And if you are more of a passenger cutting between things, then you may not need to have quite the same level of latency. I would say that I don't know. And I think that, so if you're watching something and most of the cameras are running and doing what they need to do, and there's somebody else cutting that or calling those shots, I think it's a little bit more straightforward to cut it in the cloud. But we're going to have, I believe that next month, we're hoping to have the Vector team along with the NHL on to talk about exactly what you're asking. so stay tuned. Right now, it's tentatively scheduled for the middle of July. So we'll talk about what it takes to do that.
Exciting. Something to look forward to. Let's go to the next question.
Next question is from Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida. How do you think they handled a WWDC video game segment saying game was just released a few days ago, which is risky depending on when it was filmed? Film multiple variations of that copy or film at the last minute?
Courtney?
Well, as far as the keynote goes, it was not live, so it could have been, just laid in post. It could be, maybe they put a little disclaimer at the end there that says video screen simulated. Get them off the hook. So, it's risky showing a game. Maybe in the conferences and the live demos at WWDC, I didn't watch any of the streamed sessions. But the keynote could have been laid in live, so they didn't have to worry about it crashing in the middle. It could be laid in post, or they could even do multiple takes until they get a perfect one and just cut that take in. I don't know, Alex, did you watch any of the sessions? Did they demonstrate the gaming features live in the development conference?
No, but I think that being released and being done are two different things as well. So they probably didn't have to say anything until it was already done. And then it was just going through the release process. And Apple has a lot of control over how fast a release process goes through. So it gets back into their area. But I think that I bet you they didn't record that or say it until they saw it. And until they knew that they were relatively like whatever we're looking at right now might get better, but it will you could say that it's going to go out on that, a couple days before, no matter what. But that means that they would see a build that they decided was acceptable to be released with a .1 coming up later or whatever. But this one's good enough to go out, and we're gonna. So we know that we have it. So now we can keep on letting them improve it. But that was probably weeks before. The way you have to remember the way software developed. I don't know how everybody develops it, but most of the software that I have worked on, I don't write the code, but I design apps and I work with development teams to build those apps. Usually it's good enough to release weeks or months ahead of when we do it. It's just that there's a couple things we're working on, that we would like to, shave off or work on. That last little bit of fit and finish is something. So usually it's probably 2 months before. It was probably 2, 3, 4 months before it was probably done. All the operational stuff was done, and they're just doing fit and finish as they kind of get closer to the that gives them a lot of control of when to release, because you can release something and you know that if you click this and turn this way and flip over one side, it's not going to work perfectly, and you'll fix that in a .1, that kind of thing. So, but if you had to release it, you could. So I think that's probably the relationship, as Mickey's pointing out, that there's a lot of agreements that happen if they're going to use in a keynote. There are versions of the keynote. It's not that the keynote is always, I don't know what it's like now that they're doing all these records, but I can tell you for the keynote, there were definitely stories of friends of mine that worked on stuff that the deal was done 3 days before the keynote, at Macworld or whatever, and people were pulling all-nighters with flames to put together that segment, to put it together. There was definitely some of that stuff, and they said it's good money. to have a 911 before a keynote and having to put it all together on flames for have 3 or 4 flames running for 3 days. It's a good day for a production company.
And it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I'm sure under NDA, their key partners are aware of the technology that's coming. That little flash of the Blackmagic stereo camera was not anywhere near an accident, nor did it get decided on 3 days before the keynote.
And that camera, they didn't start working. And you see pieces of that camera. They didn't start working on that camera a week before the show. That camera is probably a year old. It's a year from the time they started drawing it, at least. Yeah,
right. And so at the end of the cycle, yes, this is going in, and bingo, then everybody gets excited about it. Let's go to the next question.
Next question's from Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California. Will you be getting the Insta360 GO 3S? And if so, how might you use it?
And Courtney, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking about getting it for my BMX racing career. No.
Is this an announcement, Courtney?
No, it looks kind of interesting. It is a very small camera that fits into something the size of a GoPro. It doesn't seem to be, at least that has a viewing screen on it, and so that you can use it kind of like a GoPro for lining up and adjusting it as an action camera. But then it pops out of that, and then it looks about the size of a lipstick with a lens on the end of it. A lens is looking at the front of it, and it probably communicates back to a phone for aligning the video, etc. So it looks interesting. I'm not sure what the IP rating is on the camera itself, but they do have a little waterproof case for it in the combo setup where it goes into the viewer, the thing with the viewfinder on the back of it. So I'm not sure if it's waterproof.
Interesting. Alex, what do you know?
Waterproofing to 33 feet. So, so your tiny diving campaign now goes deeper, all the way to 33 feet. I'm reading the website. so that's what they say. Anyway.
Swimming pool friendly.
Other interesting things: compatibility with Apple Find My. So it's literally on their thing. So if you need to do the Find My, it's actually built into it.
Yeah, it goes. It's 400 feet down from where you are now.
Yeah, exactly. I would like to point out. That yesterday someone asked about this, or 2 days ago, and I said it was going to be half the size of it was going to be a 4K camera that was half the size of a GoPro, and I was right. I had no information. I just guessed. I was like, the only reason that you say it's really small is it's got to be half the size of a GoPro. It looks here. No, I guess we already have it up there, but you can cut to Courtney's there. But it looks like a fun little camera. The only thing that I would like to see is what I as the shooter can see or how to do it. The POV is great, except for the fact that usually what I need to see is I need to see the frame. I need to see what I'm doing. Now, some people don't need to do that if they're just doing sports or whatever, but it does open it up. It's a lot less bulky than the GoPro. I know people say, like, I can't believe you said the GoPro is bulky, but I have a lot of GoPros, and they are a little bulky. And this is definitely taking that down. It's 200 frames per second at 1080p, 100 frames per second at 2.7. It's 30 frames a second at 4K. So which is a little slow. I think that I'm surprised that they didn't get the 4K. I know it's really small, and I'm just looking at horse.
What does it record to, like micro SD or something?
I'm sure it might be
internal RAM only.
Internal RAM. So you
internal RAM only. So there's no card.
Yeah, that's how you save on
choose
size.
Your RAM size. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's how you make it waterproof easily.
So
Yeah,
just internal memory.
Yeah.
Do we know how much there is? How long this thing is going to shoot for?
It's 120 up to 128 gigabytes, and so it would shoot for a while. Like if you're shooting action clips, you're not gonna shoot a conference with it, but you're probably not going to shoot a conference with it. So you're but for shooting your most of the things you'd want to do, it's probably enough for a day of shooting.
Yeah. All right. Makes sense. Let's move on to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, how does InfoComm differ from the other major shows, NAB at all?
Alex?
Well, every show has its own world. I think that they all belong to themselves to some degree, and even NAB, East and West are different shows. They aim at different things. IBC is kind of like NAB, but really with a much more European turn to it. InfoComm is much more pushed towards corporate environments and so on and so forth, whereas NAB is much towards broadcast. There's a lot of overlap, and that overlap gets more and more every single day. But you're more likely at InfoComm to see things that are related to whiteboards, related to presentations and in-conference solutions. And, there's lots of things that are more, again, leaning more into what a corporation would need or a corporate environment than broadcast.
Courtney?
Yeah, InfoComm has traditionally been presentation type stuff, live shows, big screens, projection stuff. A lot of projectors is where all the projectors debut. All the projector manufacturers roll out their new projectors at InfoComm for live event AV, basically, and corporate AV. Corporate AV and live event AV, mainly for consumption, not recording. But there's some recording stuff there too, and audio as well. So you'll see some new audio for venue audio stuff, and audio installation stuff, corporate installation, speaker systems, et cetera, for installation in large AV situations.
Good time for one more. Next question.
Next question's from the QR code. Gene J. Anthony in Skokie, Illinois asks, silly question, I hope. Do most of Christie High End Projectors still come with the ability to blank portion of the chip's raster? Specifically looking at the native 4K models, but am also looking at new straight-up HD projectors as well.
And
let's go to Alex.
Yeah, I don't know why you would want to do that. I guess I'm a little confused by why you'd want to blank part of the chip's raster. But if you're talking about masking it, you should be able to mask it. And there's a couple different ways of masking it: at the projection, at the chip, on the output. On the output, it'll be a little softer as it goes out. So, but I think that there's a couple different ways to do that. The Christie Cinema cameras, I don't know which ones you're talking about. The ones that I look at they're expensive. Like, I mean, the ones that I've been. So I don't know if you're talking about those, which are north of $100,000 each, or if you're talking about some of the smaller ones.
Courtney?
Yeah, most of them are DLP, which doesn't have the problem of LCD where the light shows through even through the blacks. So they've got pretty good blacks to begin with. So masking, not too much of a problem. You'll get some light leakage to light up the screen, depending upon, the size of the sensor and the distance of the screen, et cetera. But I think it's not necessarily a problem as far as masking off the unused area of the chip if you have a different aspect ratio.
Okay, in our second hour today, we're going to pause to ask you, the viewers, some of your interests for topics coming up on our Thursdays in the future. But also, don't forget, tomorrow, Friday, our topic is Apple repair and distribution. Terry McAdams and Garrett Cleversley will give us an inside look at what happens inside an Apple-authorized reseller and repair. I know a lot of us deal with our aging Apple stuff and trying to figure out whether we can keep it going, and getting repair services can be kind of a big deal. So it'd be great to get an inside look with Terry and Garrett tomorrow on how that all happens. Saturday is all Q&A as usual. It's kind of fun, and it's a little more relaxed, I think. And I think Alex has some new things happening there. We're using kind of Saturday as a little bit of a test bed for some things. Sunday, as always, is a bit more philosophical, and it's also a show that we do not broadcast on YouTube. So it's where we have a chance to experiment a bit and also discuss more introspective and speculative topics. And don't forget, After Hours is always operation 24/7, and when the main show is not. Actually, all the time, even when the main show is there. It's where many of the Office Hours regulars and behind-the-scenes tech crew kind of hang out and gather to discuss topics and solve problems and things like that. And particularly today, Guy is on the floor at InfoComm, and so if you spend a little time exploring After Hours, this would be a good day to do it. You can see some new tech happening on the show and what's going on there. So make sure you do that. And I just want a last little pitch for if you haven't been involved in Office Hours and getting your question in, please follow the peanut trail there. You can start on the main website, askofficehours.global or officehours.global, the main functional website, and you will find ways to get involved with your questions and things like that. We'd love to have you participate.